case? Is that it?
Well, we did. We had a very long conversation, and it probably lasted about an hour. And here's some differences that him and I have. I do think he's a Christian. He said that he's been very sick. First of all, there's two reasons he told me that he doesn't want to take your calls. The first reason, he said he's been very sick, almost to the point of death. He talked about problems with his lungs. He said that he's tried to get his wife to reach out and contact you guys. And then the second reason is we had a difference of perspective on how to deal with a certain situation. Here's what he told me, Mike. He said, well, first of all, let me say that there's so many things I probably need to share with you, but it's hard to put an hour conversation in a short time, but I'll just hit the highlights. He didn't like the fact that the number that we published on the YouTube channel was his home phone number. So I apologize for that, and I took that video down. It's not my intention to publish people's home phone numbers, but it did create the scenario where he contacted me, because I have tried to reach out to him in the past. At least I think I have. I think I've sent him emails to his show. And then the second thing that we have a difference of opinion on is he said that every time you come on his show, that your situation gets worse and that you end up getting in more trouble, and now your wife is looking at a 5-year prison sentence, and that he didn't want to help, he said he's prayed to the Lord, and he feels he's being led by the Lord to not promote your story because it just makes the situation worse on you. And I was like, well, how worse can it get? And he brought up the scenario that, well, if you were to come on his show and promote your situation and ask for help and expose the evil that you do, because you are a warrior, Mike, and you do say things that expose a lot of evil, he said that they could send in people in your cell to even rough you up and break your ribs again. Where he and I differed, Mike, is that he felt this is the way he told me, he said for your own good, he's not taking your calls anymore. I said, well, Mr. Finelli, we just disagree with that. I said, I will respect a prisoner's right to, not censor what they have to say, even if it causes that prisoner, pain and destruction. That they're a grown man, they have to right, to voice their story and their situation, and I think we just agree to disagree on that, and so I will never censor you, Mike, right? And at the same time, Vincent Finelli did put out he told me that he's had you on his show, probably 20 hours or more to discuss your situation in the past, and that he felt like he has contributed to helping make people aware of what's going on, but he just felt it wasn't doing you any good, and he didn't want to contribute to that. But it was an interesting phone call, very interesting.
Well, it's true. He's had me on to talk about the situation in the past. I don't know, about 20 hours, maybe 20 hours total that I've been on the show, but not necessarily just talking about my case. But since I've been arrested a year ago, I've not talked to him, nor has he talked about it on the show, as far as I know.
Well, and what I told Mr. Finelli, I said, it's odd to me that he could not have had that conversation with you directly, that, the conversation about him being sick, and the conversation that he feels like he's not helping you by promoting your story because it just makes things worse on you, that why would I have to deliver that message? If he is your friend and, a fellow warrior in the struggle, and he said that his wife did try to reach out, to your family, and tell you guys that he was sick. He's going through some incredible issues with his lungs, as well as, that he felt the way he felt. And I can't say that I agree with him, but at the same time, I kind of saw things, from his perspective, but I just don't agree with his take on it. I think, but at the same time, it's his show, right? I mean, it's his show. He can talk about whatever topic he wants to talk about, so I can't run him down too much for that. I mean, if he's made a decision that he doesn't want to talk about you, well, I mean, what can I say about that, right? I think that he should, but let me say this, because it's hard to recap a whole hour conversation in a short, but he did say this, Mike. He said that if any of your associates want to call in and speak about your story on his show, that he would be willing to entertain that, and he will not censor that discussion. And he even said that he welcomes that, so, that was something that he did offer, he did offer that.
Okay, it sounds like he's willing to allow the platform to be used to convey the message. He himself just will not lead the band.
Yeah, that's the impression I got as well, right?
And I was told by a friend of his that he had been warned. He wouldn't say who warned him, but he said that he was told, do not talk about Mike Parsons, period. And, and it scared him. So I don't know if it's the FBI or what, but in reading through this discovery that I've got, that I sent out, today, Mrs. Parsons will probably get it, and maybe be able to scan it and send it to you, hopefully. But if you read through it, you can see that it clearly says that the FBI in Memphis has been watching me for a long time, viewing me as a, quote, sovereign citizen. And, they basically tried to define that as people that are, well, I can't remember verbatim, but if you're independent, self-sufficient, and self-governing, they don't like you.
No doubt.
They want you dependent upon them. It says he doesn't recognize the court's authority. He doesn't recognize motor vehicle laws. Well, no, motor vehicle laws, that's commerce. I mean, it says so. It's commerce. It's only for commercial stuff. And because I don't have a license, I've been pulled over a couple of times. I don't have a license. And I tell them if there's a emergency I can help them with. I saw the blue lights. More than happy to help.
That's great. That's great. I got friends that drive without a license as well, so I'm very familiar with that.
But otherwise, I'm not here to engage in commerce on the side of the road. And I know that you work for a corporation, city of fill in the blank, and that makes you a corporate employee, and all you can do is engage in commerce. But I also know that I have an inherent right to travel, and that's what I'm doing. I'm not displaying any tags that claim I'm in commerce with the state. Therefore, I'm not, because I don't have this license, I'm not subject to the statutes that go along with it. And that's the law.
Yep.
And those that are, older, they know this, eventually. The higher ups know it. It's the lower ones that don't know it. They're the dangerous ones. Young ones, they're dangerous.
Yeah, no, I know. They can kill you and kill your dog, and you already know about all that. They killed your dog, and they shot at you.
Yeah, I've had 4 of my wolf hybrids shot and killed. One right in front of my wife the day that we moved to the farm. A year later, another one. They came on our farm and opened the gate and let them out. And then, my alpha male pilot is like my son to me. You have no idea how hard that was for me, not getting him back and not knowing where he was, and only being able to assume that they shot and killed him. And that just tore me up. And I mean, he was a very special animal.
Yeah.
He was truly a spirit animal. My wife had dreamed about him before he was born, the day he was born, and he was the one that I would take and do all the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, Make-A-Wish, bring, instead of going to see the wolves in Yellowstone, we'll bring the wolves to you. And I would take them to the dog shows and stuff and let these little children experience time with a wolf, which gave them so much good energy. And he was so gentle with these children. He's a big 150-pound wolf with a huge head. He'd stick his head there, and they just latch on. His head was big as some of these kids' bodies. And they just hug him and love on him.
Right.
And that was so special, and they took that from us. And then they killed Brandy. And then, 2015 or 16. 2016, I had 2 others. Somebody came and somehow damaged the fence to where I know they didn't get out on their own, made it so they could get out, and then shot and killed them.
It's terrible, man. My wife makes the point. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother.
You call and report it, and nothing's done. And like I forgot to say this when I was talking about the analogy between the Berlin Wall. It wasn't that Reagan said tear that wall down that got the wall tore down. It's the people. They started out just a few, and they got shot off the wall with water cannons. and other devices. And finally, when everybody was on the wall, then it's like, okay, we might as well climb the wall too, because the whole country's on that wall tearing the damn thing down. The people have to come together to turn this beast off and stop feeding it, stop convicting people. Everybody, it takes a movement. It takes everybody to get out there in massive numbers. And when your close personal friends that you think are in the fight with you won't even speak about your case because they've been threatened. And I have no doubt that Vincent says he's sick. He probably is sick. He told me a couple of years ago that he thought that the chemtrails had gotten him where he's got respiratory problems.
Yeah, it was issues with the lungs is what he was saying.
Right. And, he does modern Western medicine. I've tried to steer him towards naturopathics. He's got some very good friends that are totally naturopathic that could probably help him. But he's not there yet.
Yeah.
And I respect him because he's there with his wife and mother and, one or two others, I guess. And
he did seem to genuinely care about you and Miss Parsons. I think the impression I get is that he's had people very close to him because he's helped promote their story, that the FBI has visited them, ruined their businesses, not just you, but other people as well, and he thinks he may be contributing to the destruction of these other people's livelihoods, and he won't directly participate anymore, but he'll let people call in the show and talk about whatever they want to talk about. We did pray at the end of our phone call. I got to tell you, even though we started off our phone call a little bumpy, I did gain a certain amount of respect for the man, even though we disagreed on how to handle, prisoners reaching out from prison. He did seem genuine. I mean, much more so than I've only talked to him for the first time yesterday, Mike. You know him a lot better than I do, but my impression in my first phone call was he genuinely cares, but he's just tired of seeing people's livelihoods get ruined by this satanic government, and he didn't want to contribute to it. What he felt it was contributing to it. I don't see it that way. I go back to Joshua and Caleb when they went and spied out the land. Joshua and Caleb came back with a good report and said the land is flowing with milk and honey. It's a great promised land. The other people said, there's giants in the land. We are just grasshoppers. I don't focus on how big the FBI is or the Department of Justice or this satanic government. We serve a mighty big God, and so I don't see the issues. But again, I'm not suffering in prison, and so it may be easier for me to talk like that, but I hope I can maintain my faith when I go through whatever tribulations lay for me ahead.
Well, the thing is that I was just a voice. That's all I was. I was not one of these leaders in this, movement of taking back the republic and taking back our freedom. I just started, talking about what other people were talking about, and maybe my voice resonated. Maybe the way that I said it and the cadence that I said it and the manner in which I delivered it resonated with people. And the government felt like, well, he's effective, and so we don't need that. And they come after me for that reason. I don't know. I just know that there's a lot of other people out there that have been on the radio talking about this stuff for a long time. And some of them stop and some of them keep going. I know that there's certain things that Alex Jones will not talk about, the corporate government structure and all that stuff. But it's got to stop. And if we don't stop, then our children are going to have to deal with this. You want your children or your grandchildren or your, beyond your.
Okay, that was Mike Parsons from prison on January the 8th, 2018. It cut him off in mid-sentence because the prison phone call cuts him off after 15 minutes. I don't know if he'll call back. If he does, we'll record that call too. I would ask that you please pray for Mike Parsons, write him a letter in prison, and if you have any questions about his case, I suggest you write him a letter and talk with him directly or communicate with him directly. He may be, if you put some money on his phone in prison, he may be even able to call you from prison, and you can have a conversation yourself. I always try to encourage that anybody that's learning about political prisoners, that they do their own research and communicate with the prisoner directly. I'm not a spokesman for Mike Parsons. I simply advocate for him because I believe he's being targeted by a corrupt government. And I hope I'm not the only advocate. I pray that there are hundreds, if not thousands, more advocates. Thank you for your time. Oh, if you want to know the prison address for Mike Parsons, it's on yearofjubilee.com. And go to list of other prisoners, and he'll be alphabetically ordered on the list of other prisoners. It's on the tab on the right hand at the top. Thank you.
Be monitored or recorded.
$4 a call for 15 minutes. It wears you out quick. I won't be long on this one, but I just wanted to give you this number again for John Statmiller. If you don't have it, I tried to give it yesterday. It's 51, and he's got a huge radio audience.
Now, Mike, is that a home phone number where he's going to be mad if I publish it, or is that a radio station number? Or?
I believe that's his cell phone number. So.
Okay. So it's probably not a good idea if I make that particular number public, which I can edit that out. Anytime in the future, if you think a number is a personal number and you want me to edit it, just make a note, because I typically put all the words out you have to say. I don't want to censor you, but at the same time, I want to respect people's private numbers if I need to.
Yeah, I keep forgetting. But, you know, I know this. I don't believe that Vincent is the reason that I'm where I'm at. I don't believe that me going on his show and talking about this, per se, it could be any number of radio shows that I've been on. I used to have my own radio talk show.
You know, Mr. Finelli brought up the idea that they want your airstrip. But, you know, I'm seeing a common denominator here, Mike, and it's not that they want your airstrip. You know, you, Jeffrey Winehouse, Schaefer Cox, Ed and Elaine Brown, Russell Landers, I mean, you all speak about liberty, and you do it from a selfless perspective, the way Jesus would have done it. You know, you don't expect anything in return. You just want our country to return to righteousness. And for some reason, you hit their radar, and they've got to get rid of you. Now, I believe that it is because you're speaking the truth. I mean, I'm just curious, from your perspective, why do you think they've come after you and your wife in such a harsh manner?
I think you're right. Doing the right thing because it's the right thing with nothing to gain financially or any other way other than knowing that you're doing the right thing. These people rely on greed. The only reason that certain businesses stay in business is because of greed and procrastination. And the government is dependent upon people meeting them. If nobody ever picked up the phone and called 911, there would be no need for police. If they knew how to put out a fire, there would be no reason for a fire department.
Amen.
If they didn't have to, you know, go to somebody else to get their neighbor to do the right thing, to make things right, there wouldn't be a need for a court. So when we the people do the right thing because it's the right thing, because we know it's the right thing, when we follow God's law and love our neighbor as ourselves, realizing we're all in this together. There's enough for everybody. Everybody, there's plenty. Nobody's going to get shorted on this deal. That's the way it is. You don't have to think that you're going to get the short end of the stick just because you don't have a title or whatever. The people that are clawing their ways to the top, they are the epitome of laziness and evil, because instead of them working and earning it, they want to destroy somebody else in order to take what they've got. And my wife has given away most of our animals, our horses, our goats, our emus, our chickens, our rabbits. And she's, you know, trying to find homes for our wolf hybrids. This is our family.
Man, I know it's tough, Mike. I could hear the emotion in your wife's voice last night when she was talking about giving away the horses, and it's got to be tough, man. I know how much you love those animals.
This woman pled guilty to a crime she didn't commit to protect our animals because they told her if she didn't plead guilty, she'd go to jail right then. And they would not be provided for. They would all be ultimately killed or displaced. Who knows where. That's the degree of love that she has for our animals. I don't know, I know there's people out there that can relate. I just need those people to hear this so they can stand up so this doesn't happen to them.
Amen. Amen, Mike.
I'm sorry. I'm going to have to hop off.
Okay, just know you're in our prayers, brother. You're in our prayers, and faithful unto death. And this world is just passing through. I pray that God works a mighty miracle for you and your wife. But no matter what happens, we're going to be faithful to our King. And I know you are, brother. I know it's tough, but just know that you do have our concerns and prayers, brother.
Now, I know that there are people in power that could stop this instantly. Rex Tillerson could recognize my appointment as ambassador. Donald Trump could pardon Mrs. Parsons or recognize me as the ambassador of another country. Governor Haslam could have reversed the false conviction from 2009 to exonerate me. I don't know if he's likely to do anything until the end of the year, and by that time we'll have lost everything. My wife will be in prison, and this destruction of my family over exposing corruption, this is totally un-American, and this is more akin to some Nazi Germany third world banana republic. And the people that we're dealing with, this Monty Zapolsky guy, the FBI agent that frames me, and his counterpart in Memphis framed Mrs. Parsons, these are the epitome of the ultimate liars. They must be attorneys. They have to be lawyers. They couldn't get a job otherwise, so they became FBI agents because they're professional liars. And I've gone through this whole discovery and found lie after lie after lie. And the question is, how many lies do you have to uncover before people will realize the whole thing is a fraud? The whole thing is a rigged game, a scam. Even the courts, when the judges don't even put in the record what you say, they twist things around to satisfy their needs. They appoint an attorney before you're ever in there, and then they let that attorney, the first thing they do is withdraw because they say they've got a conflict of interest. Then they appoint them as standby counsel, effectively eliminating your right to legal counsel, but satisfying Argersinger versus Hamlin. So you'll sit there and not know what's going on, not know what to ask, and have absolutely no help, but yet they can still send you to prison because they can claim you had standby counsel. It's a rigged game.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's a fraud.
No doubt.
I mean, and as the the public defender guy, federal public defender told me, he said, this is what they do in order to get you into the system. In other words, it's not about the truth, it's not about justice, it's about getting you into that system so they can tag you and bag you, put you in a cage, and make money off of you.
No, I completely agree with you, Mike. I think what you're saying is absolute truth. I'll share this thought with you. There are going to be some people that love you a great deal, that are very close to you. Just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, I'm sure that there are some people that cared about those three young men, and they would say, just for a little bit, bow down so the king doesn't get so mad. And you're going to be hearing counsel like that. But Mike, I want to tell you that I admire your warrior spirit. I admire the fact that you don't compromise. And I certainly don't want to see you get in any more trouble. I don't want to see them send somebody to, rough you up in prison, or I don't want to see your wife go to prison. But I'm just saying, I admire the fact that no matter what is happening all around you, that you have stood like a bold warrior of God and you have not compromised. And if America had more men like you, we wouldn't have this freaking society that we've wound up in. And regardless of whatever you decide to do, you have our love and respect. But I admire you for what you've already done. And, there are people that recognize it. And I know it doesn't appear that way when you're stuck in that hellhole. But there are some people out here that recognize what's going on.
Well, I know what happens at the end of the game. I mean, I'm a follower of Christ, so I know that my accountability is to my Creator.
Amen.
And standing for the truth is Christ is the voice of truth. And that was what I referred to my radio show, the voice of truth with Mike Parsons. I'm not the voice of truth. Christ Jesus is. I'm just pointing people in that direction. And certainly everyone has a choice. I was just praying last night that my family, who has basically been chilled where they won't even talk. I mean, they'll send me letters and stuff, but they won't lift a finger to help me get out of here, and that's because they're all afraid. And they would rather be comfortable as a slave than have to deal with potential risk that I've gone through and all the harm and hell that my wife has had to endure over the last
You know, Mike, I'm sorry, you faded out there. It faded out just for a bit of it, but the Bible talks about no cowardly or fearful will enter the kingdom of heaven. And I see that fear, when people operate in fear, they do some very crazy things. They'll end up ratting out their neighbor to the IRS. They'll end up calling the FBI and becoming a snitch. I mean, fear will drive a normally good person to do what I would consider some very evil things. And so we've got to purge fear. The first thing God told Gideon when Gideon's army was going to go fight, he said, get rid of anybody in the camp that has fear. And so I think you're right. I'm not trying to belittle people who are afraid. We all get afraid from time to time, but if we call upon the name of the Lord, He'll get us through that. I really do believe that.
I have fear, but I know at the end of the day, I have no options but to do what is right and speak the truth, and that's what I have to do. I have no other option, and so it's just a matter of where I'm at in my spirit, the core, and who I am as a human being and a child of God, a follower of Christ. I know that Proverbs 17:15 talks about, the evil and those that support the evil, they're both abominations to the Lord. And even though some people might say, well, I don't support the evil. Well, if you're not doing anything about the evil, then you are supporting it.
Yeah, amen. You've heard of that term, misprision of a felony. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but last night I made a video and I charged the entire Congress, mainstream media, and every law enforcement official of misprision of a felony. That they know what's going on is corrupt. Specifically, I called out the fact that Obama put out a forged birth certificate. Nobody did a dang thing about it, said a dang thing about it. But they charge us with misprision of a felony. I charge them with misprision of a felony. They know that what's going on is treasonous behavior, and they refuse to do anything about it.
Right. I remember Trump talking about that for a while, and others too. But you talked about somebody that was doing this video about sovereign citizens. Do you remember who that was?
Yeah, there's a guy by the name of Mike the Cop. He gets 400,000 videos, typical, maybe even more, sometimes millions, and he was mocking and making fun of sovereign citizens without adequately defining the term. And as I mentioned before, I believe the government is setting up this phrase, sovereign citizen, to be a catch-all for any dissidents who stands up for their own rights and stands against tyrannical authority. And they've thrown you in that category, even though you may not self-identify as sovereign citizen. And at some point when you have time, I might want to play you his video and you can comment on it, because I believe that he was stirring up the masses of public opinion against sovereign citizens. So when the government pulls them out of their car, beats them, tortures them, kills their dog, that the masses of humanity will be cheering the cops instead of siding with what's right and siding for individual rights.
You're absolutely right, and that's the message that needs to get out. This is a catchphrase like conspiracy theory. You expose corruption in government, they say, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, because the government will never admit that it's committing crime. They'll never admit it.
Right.
You rarely, if ever, see any prosecution of any prosecutors or judges. Usually, if they are, it's because it's so exposed and so criminal that they had to do something, or in some cases, the judge or the prosecutor they go after is actually not a bad guy. They just wanted to paint him as such to get rid of him so they could get somebody really evil in there to do the dirty work.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
The system is totally corrupted, and if the people truly cared about their families and their futures, they would rise up and put a stop to it overnight. But like one friend said, as long as they're well-kept slaves, they don't have a problem being a slave.
No, unfortunately, you're right. And that's very sad, because our freedom and throwing off tyranny and having individual rights and decisions to raise our children is much more important than having the latest iPhone or a nice television or a nice car, The
government that's big enough to give you anything is big enough to take it away from you.
Wow, yeah.
Tanks, like the tank that went and took out, was ready to take out the Browns, Edna Lane Brown.
That's right.
They got a tank in Tipton County, Tennessee. Why does a county need a tank if not to destroy human beings, people that live in the community? There's no invading forces. The Army is here amongst us, ready to take us out at a moment's notice.
No, you're absolutely right, Mike. You're absolutely right. There's a book called Rise of the Warrior Cop, The Militarization of America's Police Forces by Radley Balco, and it talks about local law enforcement getting things like tanks and how ridiculous that is and how we've allowed it to happen and proliferate all throughout America. Mike? All right, we've lost him. So if you care about Mike and you want to write him a letter, I pray that you do. If he calls back, we'll add it to the conversation. Like you said, like you heard him say, it cost him $4 every 15 minutes, and I don't know how much money he has on his phone. Thank you for your time. The last line of peaceful defense between a tyrannical government and the defendant is jury nullification.